just went live before I expected it to. So hello everyone, give me 1 second. I'm gonna hop on Instagram. And let me know if you can hear me okay. Let me know if you can hear me okay. Okay, so I'm gonna go on Instagram. If you don't follow me on Instagram, you should. And you can at the_Renaissance_Amazon_81. And I have a lot to share with you. My name is Michaela Valletta, also known as the Renaissance Amazon. Okay. Okay, so I'm on Instagram. I'm live on Instagram, and I'm live on YouTube. My name is Michaela Valletta, also known as the Renaissance Amazon. And I'm sitting outside, and sometimes the sound is not that good when I'm outside. So if you guys have a problem hearing me, please let me know, and I will move inside because I have a lot to say. And I want to make sure that I am heard. So again, if the sound is not good and you can't hear me, let me know, okay? Okay, and I'm gonna make this announcement again as more people come in, that if you cannot hear me, to please let me know, and I will move inside. I need the sound to be good, okay? Okay, so again, my name is Michaela Valletta. If you don't know who I am in my background, a lot of you may or may not already know that I'm a trainer. I have a background in exercise and sports science and nutrition. I'm also a dancer, a serious student of dances of the African diaspora. I come from a family of revolutionaries and freedom fighters. I'm from New York City. I'm Afro-American, okay? So a lot of you may know these things about me, that I teach classes on nani eggs or yoni eggs. I'm very much into teaching about sacred sexuality. I'm very much into history, ancient art, and I also am an art model myself. I pose for photographers. I do nude stuff and body stuff. So you guys may or may not know that. So if you didn't know it, now you know. Something you may not have known, and again, I'm going to tell you again. If you guys cannot hear me, if you're having issues hearing me, let me know, and I will move inside. I want to make sure that the sound is good, okay? So what you may not know about me is that when I was a kid, my dad had a radio show in New York City. My dad was a journalist, and also on the front lines of the civil rights movement, Black radical in the 60s, okay? My dad was born in 1942, so he will be 77 this Saturday, actually, okay? Now, what was I about to say? Damn, I lost my train of thought. When I was 9 years old, okay, that was the very first time I was on the radio, and I was on his radio show. And at 9 years old, I was speaking about women's reproductive rights, basically women's right to have access to a safe abortion, right? Keeping that legal. So I was speaking about that, and I was speaking about animal rights people. And I was talking about how I remember saying that I wanted to take the animal rights people and put them in Yankee Stadium with a bunch of lions and see if the lions feel the same way about them. And like, those lions would tear their ass up. Anyhow, I remember doing that at 9 years old. Now, for some reason, I've always been super pro-choice, right? I myself have never had an abortion, but from the time I was a kid, I was very much into the pro-choice movement. In junior high school, we had to do community service. A lot of people did community service working in the schools with kids. I never wanted to work with kids. I did community service at Planned Parenthood in the 7th grade, okay? Again, let me know if you can't hear me, okay? So if any of you having issues with the sound, I will move inside. And let me see, the light keeps switching too. Okay. So if any of you guys have a problem hearing me, let me know. Okay, so in the 7th grade, I did community service at Planned Parenthood. And then when I was in high school, I worked for an organization called NARAL New York, okay? NARAL is a National Action Rights Abortion League, okay? And I was a peer educator. So what we did, hold on. Darn it. I don't feel like this light is good. Yeah, light is better over here. Hold on. Sorry, the sun moves. I have a lot to talk to you guys about, so I want to make sure you can hear me and see me, okay? Okay. Let me make sure I got this. On YouTube and Instagram. Okay. Okay. So continuing on with my conversation. As a peer educator in high school in New York City, I would go around New York City to all the boroughs, and I would speak to my peers, about women's reproductive rights, sexuality, and grassroots advocacy, okay? And it was a group of us, men and women, black and white. And we had to stay up on the legislation around abortion. So we always had to stay up on the legislation, the laws, and the things that were happening. Now, in New York City, girls could get abortions under the age of 18 for free without their parents even knowing about it. They didn't need their parents' consent. And in New York City, you didn't need someone to drive you. Like people that live in a small town, they would need someone to like drive them to the one clinic, and the whole town knows you and your family. So, so in New York, it was easy for teenage girls to get abortions. And in my high school, a lot of girls got pregnant. They all had abortions. I didn't know anybody that had a kid as a teenager. And they were good girls. They were like students. I mean, one of my best friends, she was on birth control. She was on birth control and using a condom and still got pregnant. Now, I feel like that's one reason why it's not such a great idea for teenagers to have sex like that, because teenagers get pregnant off, I think teenage girls get pregnant off of anything. You know, when I was in high school, I was a goody two-shoes, so I wasn't having sex like that. I might have had sex twice, like lost my virginity and I was almost 16 and then had sex like one more time. But I was too focused on playing sports, dancing, getting my good grades. Like I wasn't that girl, but all my friends who were teenagers, they were sexually active, got pregnant. They all had abortions, right? And they all have kids now. They're all married with kids now. They all are moms, So, but anyhow, I remember going around New York City and trying to explain to other girls in New York City about how you don't understand how lucky you are, because here we had easy access to it. But a lot of states back then were trying to pass laws that said, like, if, let's say it's illegal in your state, or, some states which, damn, the sun just got really strong. See, the sun moves and it changes. Hold on. Okay, hold on. Oh, might have to go inside. Got super sunny out here all of a sudden. See, I don't have a cameraman and I don't edit videos. Okay. Some states were trying to make it so that you needed both of your parents' signatures to have an abortion, right? But the problem with that is that there are people who didn't know what both of their parents were. There are people who are pregnant by their father. That does happen, and that did happen. Girls who were raped by their dad, by their stepdad or the biological dad, and got pregnant. Hold on, let me go inside. It'll be better. Okay, 1 second. I'm gonna sit this down. Okay, so to continue with the conversation. Okay, yeah, so that does happen. There are girls who get raped by their dad and they end up pregnant with their stepdad. There are also people who might want to get an abortion, teenage girl, but the parents are really religious and want to force the girl to have the baby, right? And there's nothing worse than forcing a woman to have a baby that does not want to have a baby. And there's nothing worse than forcing a woman to get rid of a baby who does not want to get rid of a baby. Because that can happen on either end. And I have a lot of things, a lot of facts to present to you today. And I have a lot of stories to tell today because we learn from stories. Now, some of these stories are not my stories and some of them are. This is a heavy topic. I'm going to try not to cry as I tell these stories and as I talk about these facts. This is something that I'm very passionate about, and I'm trying to have the patience. I'm trying to have the patience to deal with the ignorant people. Because on the one hand, I don't have patience. There's already a bunch of people I've cursed out and blocked, and I'm like, I don't want to know them or see whatever the fuck they're talking about because these people are too fucking stupid for me to associate with. And I am an intellectual snob, okay? I'm not stuck up on how I look or whatever. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. But when it comes to my intelligence and when it comes to the things that I speak on what the fuck I know. And I have top-notch research skills and critical thinking skills, okay? I wasn't raised with religion. And I talk about this shit all the time. And it's going to be a part of this conversation too. Why I'm always talking about that patriarchal religion shit is bullshit, okay? And I'm not afraid to say that. A lot of people feel like they need to tiptoe on the feelings of religious people, and they need to tiptoe on men's feelings, and they need to tiptoe on white people's feelings. I don't give a fuck about any of that shit, okay? I am about facts and the truth. I'm a lot of things, but I'm not an actress, okay? And we learn from telling stories. I have some personal things I'm going to talk about, stuff that I didn't know if and when I would ever share it, but I feel like it's important because we learn from stories as well, okay? Okay, so now, a lot of you have heard me talk about the matriarchy, right? And matriarchal traditions. A lot of you have heard me speak about that and Amazons and stuff like that, right? And I always say that a lot of people want to blame the white man for stuff, but it's not simply the white man, and it's not just the white man. What it is patriarchal religions. In different parts of the world, the whole entire world was matriarchal at first. All throughout Asia, all throughout Africa, all throughout Europe, all throughout the Polynesian Islands, all throughout South America, the Caribbean, they were all matriarchal at first. And under matriarchal traditions, there was not any suppression of men, okay? There wasn't suppression of men. Men could still be chiefs. Men could still be in positions of power. There weren't restrictions put on men in that way. There were not restrictions put on people's sexuality, as long as it was healthy, meaning there's two healthy consenting adults, okay? And not kids, and rape and stuff like that, right? Two healthy consenting adults, all right? But when it came to sexuality, we look at the ancient art, you see orgy scenes. You see orgy scenes in ancient art all around the world, okay? All around the world, in the caves. And we know what has been written in stone is important. There's a reason why people say it's not written in stone. Why people say it's not written in stone? Because shit that is written in stone is extremely fucking important. So pay attention, okay? Pay attention to the shit that's written in the sacred caves. And I don't care where on the fucking planet, because the whole planet is sacred. There is knowledge and wisdom and sacred spots in every part of the planet. It's not just Africa. It's every fucking where, okay? And we can learn from all people. And when we look around the world, you start to notice certain common threads. Like everybody was matriarchal at first, right? And under matriarchal traditions, people honored and respected Mother Earth. They didn't feel like they dominated the earth. They understood that we all come from our mothers, okay? Mother's Day just passed. The one thing about it that annoys me is that all fucking year round, it's about the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. And, oh, God, please help me do this. And, oh, God is good. And, oh, God must have given you a body like that. And whenever somebody tells me that, I'm like, this shit didn't come from God. This shit came from the goddess, okay? And God and the goddess are not interchangeable. A lot of people act like, oh, same thing. No, it's not the fucking same thing. It's not the same thing. It's not. Are you going to tell to the dudes out there who love women, people saying the God and goddess is the same thing? If you say, I want to worship the goddess, and a dude with a dick pops up in your face, are you going to say, oh, it's the same thing? Are you? You know what I'm saying? If you are a woman who likes dudes, strictly dickly, as they say, even though women who say that always are not strictly dickly, but let's say that, right? And you say you want a God, you want to worship a God, and a chick pops up, you want to have sex with a God, and a woman pops up, you're not going to think it's the same. It's not the same. God comes from goddess. Look at the word. God is a fraction of goddess, okay? Man, a fraction of one man. Not to say that men are less than, but I'm saying the word man comes from the word woman. God comes from the word goddess. Male comes from the word female. Women have 2 X chromosomes. Men have an X and a Y. You guys are missing a quarter of a piece. Now, it's not to say that men are less than or don't have a purpose, but y'all don't birth shit, okay? You're not the ones with the uterus and the womb that can give birth. So, in this conversation, to those of you who feel like you have these strong opinions about abortion, because this discussion is going to be about women's reproductive rights, and that's not just abortion. Abortion is a part of it, but it's the whole thing. And we need to understand, we need to, number one, deal with facts, because a lot of people form strong opinions based on ignorance. They never looked up the motherfucking facts. And this is true even when it comes to nutrition and health. Yeah, I know. Those of you who follow me with that, yeah, I know that the shit I talk about is not the typical shit people talk about. And I call shit out. And I always got facts, okay? Facts. Multiple ways. Multiple fucking ways. Sometimes it's books and studies. Sometimes it's real life shit. Sometimes it's stuff that's happened to me. And sometimes it's stuff that's happened to clients of mine, people that I've helped, okay? So there's so many things I need to say and go to with this. Now I'm going to say this. Every culture was matriarchal first. They didn't feel like they owned people's sexuality and body. You had marriage, but marriage didn't mean that that person only had sex with their spouse. Men and women had sex freely under matriarchy, even though they might have been married. And the men, there are tons of matriarchal cultures where, especially like we're in North America, this definitely was true in North America, where the men would take care of all the kids in the town as if they were theirs. So all the kids in that village, they took care of as if they were theirs. It didn't matter who the father was. It mattered who the mother was, because everything was traced through the mother. And to be real with you, if people were really trying to have the strongest babies, if we divorce all the religion stuff that we've been taught about sex and reproduction and family, which comes from patriarchal religion, and I'm about to explain the difference, then whatchamacallit? Then what was I going to say? Like under that, you have, when everything is traced to the father, if a man doesn't want to be a father, if that man dies or that man just leaves the woman, now that baby doesn't have a father, okay? Under matriarchal traditions, when the men took care of all of the kids in the village like they were theirs, there were no fatherless children, right? Also, scientifically, men's sperm is designed to compete. And it's not designed to compete like a lot of people, the way you're taught sexually, is that it's designed to compete against themselves. But no, it's designed to compete against other men. And you can read the book Sex at Dawn. I'm not going to get too much into that right now. But read the New York Times bestseller, Sex at Dawn. And I can promise you haven't read anything, that, and also the book, The Myth of Monogamy, but Sex at Dawn is the best one. Now, and we look at reproduction throughout species and shit, right? So there's more facts. But regardless of that, under patriarchal traditions, right? So before the Americas was even colonized, there were witch hunts in Europe. It was the Roman Catholic Church wanting to burn witches and torture witches. And who were the witches? The witches were the women with the herbs to help a woman become more fertile, less fertile. Abortion help to ease the pains of childbirth, because childbirth is no fucking joke. Women, we stand at the doorway of life and death. Birth, life and death. Life can happen and death can happen in birth, okay? And traditionally, women, midwives dealt with that, okay? Birth is a spiritual process. It's a ceremony. Same thing with death, okay? Same thing. Now, the thing is that you had these witch trials in Europe where they tortured and murdered millions of women before they came over here. But the same thing happened in Asia. And I don't really know, I'm not an expert in Chinese history, but China, all those places have the same thing. And it wasn't the white man, but there was patriarchal religion that came and swept through there. And the Amazon women were the women who fought against that on every continent, okay? So just do your research with that. I will put some books below on my YouTube video for you to look at. Now, the thing is, okay, so now I said that. Now let me go, get into some facts. There is a documentary I was just, wait. I'm gonna get into some facts in a second. What I wanted to say was the very first time that I was saying in the beginning of this video that I was on the radio was when I was 9 years old on my dad's radio show. And I was talking about women's reproductive rights. I'm gonna try to get him, he has a cassette. I'm gonna see if I can get it on an audio thing to put on the internet. I was 9. Then in junior high, I did community service at Planned Parenthood. I mean, not 9, when I was 7th grade. And then in high school, I worked for NARAL New York, right? And then as an adult, in about 2010, I did a training to become a doula. And I found out what a doula was. I had a childhood best friend who always wanted to be a midwife. And when she grew up, she moved to California. We're from New York City. She moved to Cali, where she thought that midwives are more respected in the hospitals than they were in New York. And then I had this friend I went to college with, who I went to San Francisco with her for the first time in 2007. And she went to a meeting about doulas. And I had no idea what a doula was. And I learned then what a doula was. And a doula is a woman that helps a woman in childbirth and labor. In 2007, I was about 25 years old. I wasn't thinking about babies at all, okay? That wasn't on my mind. But I started working with the yoni eggs, the 90 eggs that a lot of you know I teach about, which help women to strengthen their vaginal muscles and get more control. I started working with that in 2005, okay? So by 2007, I had been working with it for 2 years, and I was already a trainer, so I was thinking about starting a class, which I did start, called Sensual Strength Training, to teach women how to strengthen their vaginal muscles, get more control, have deeper orgasms, stuff like that. I wasn't really thinking about childbirth like that, right? Like I knew that, okay, you strengthen your muscles, it'll help with childbirth, but that's, the extent. So 2010, I did my doula training and I learned a whole lot. I realized, damn, all the schooling I had, and I didn't know really anything. We didn't learn anything about what happens to a woman's body when she's pregnant and during the birth process. We didn't learn anything about that. And so now 2010, well, I'm going to stop it right there. I'm going to come back to the story because it's going to go into my personal shit. But before I go into my personal shit, let me go back and say some facts. But I just wanted to let you guys know about that, okay? So women's reproductive rights to me is not just about dealing with the abortion conversation, but also how and when a woman gives birth, right? Okay, so just follow me. Okay, so I don't like calling people who are against abortion pro-life. No, they're not pro-life. And I'm going to explain why, okay? What I will call them is anti-choice. They are against women having a choice. But they're not pro-life because there are times when a woman having a baby could end her life, okay? And then who's going to take care of that baby? Or what if she has other kids and she dies having this kid? So now she can't take care of none of the kids. Okay, there's all kinds of situations. There are women who are raped by their fathers. That shit happens. And that's something I learned a lot from teaching my A class. I wasn't thinking about sexual trauma because I didn't have any sexual trauma or rape in my background. So I wasn't even thinking about that. But when I started teaching my class to women, I started to realize so many women have had that. And people have some sick stories. So there are women who have been raped by their father, their stepfather, and who get pregnant, okay? So that was one of the issues when I was in high school that we would talk about when we were dealing with legislation is like, if you make laws in certain states that say that a girl needs both of her parents' signature, and A, she doesn't know what both of her parents are, or B, she's pregnant by her father, and she's asking for the signature, who may not give it to her. All that shit happens. And that's why that was also a problem. The work that I did was not just about keeping abortion legal, but it was making sure that all women in the U.S. had access to a safe and legal abortion. Safe, key word. Because when abortion was illegal in this country, in the United States of America, when abortion was illegal, it was the number one killer of all women, okay? Of all women. The number one killer of all women was illegal back alley abortions, okay? That was number one. So that tells you a lot. That tells you a lot of women were so desperate that they would risk their lives. And people reduce it to, oh, she was just being irresponsible. Oh, how come she didn't use birth control? And when there's so many more stories than that. Let's be real and let's deal with facts, okay? And that's what I'm really going to get into. So keep listening. All the situations that occur in life are way more complicated than deducing it to something that fucking simple. So let's get into some facts and some stories. First of all, the poorest 13% of women have over half of the abortions in this country, okay? So the poorest 13%, that's very poor, of women have over half of the abortions in this country. So it's mostly poor women who feel like they cannot afford it, okay? 75% of the abortions performed in 2014 were poor or low income. 75%, okay? Wealthier people can afford to travel wherever to get an abortion. So whatever laws you pass, somebody got money, they can go get whatever they want. So passing restrictive laws affect poor people the most, okay? Abortion rates are higher in countries where it is completely illegal, like El Salvador. In El Salvador, it's punishable for 2 to 8 years in prison a woman will go to in El Salvador for having an abortion. And there's a woman in El Salvador who went to jail for 8 years for giving birth to a stillbirth baby. Okay? Now, in Georgia right now, they're saying, I think this law was passed, that if a woman has a miscarriage, that she will be under criminal investigation. Under criminal investigation, okay? You know how many women have miscarriages? I have a friend who called me crying in tears. This girl that I know who called me crying in tears because she thought she was having a miscarriage and did not know she was pregnant. She was working with a client and started bleeding everywhere. Had no idea that she was pregnant. So women have miscarriages all the time. They don't know it. They were pregnant. And then there are women who know they're pregnant, still have a miscarriage. And that shit is fucking a horrible thing to go through. So to be under criminal investigation because of it, really? Okay. Now, and especially Afro-American women, when you talk about giving birth to stillbirths, you know, when you talk about losing babies, Afro-American women lose a lot of babies in a lot of different ways to a point where it's crazy and nobody knows why. Also, Afro-American women in this country lose their lives a lot in labor and pregnancy. Look up the facts. Black women in America, it doesn't matter about education, it doesn't matter about how much money they have. Black women in America lose their life in childbirth at exponential rates, okay? Now, the global South has the highest, has the strictest abortion laws. The global South, not the American South, the global South. So South America, I think a lot of the Caribbean, like some of those, you know, a lot of parts of Africa. So when you get up to like North America and Northern Europe, you have the least strict abortion laws, right? But yet the U.S. and Northern Europe have the lowest abortion rates in the world. Okay, so the U.S., where abortion is way more accessible than it is in South America, has a way lower abortion rate than South America does. Okay, so these are all facts. Now, in Germany, women get 3 years off, up to 3 years off when they have a baby. In France, women get up to 16 weeks off when they have a baby. And in Ireland, until May of 2018, abortion was totally illegal. But yet their abortion rates were super low because in Ireland, there's free public health care and the women get 6 months leave when they have a baby. So even though abortion was illegal, the abortion rate was so low because they have support. In a country like South America, even in North America, there are a lot of women who have to fucking work. And they don't get sick days or time off. And if they don't go to work, they will lose their job. So then how are they going to feed this baby? And how are they going to feed their other babies? How? And there are plenty of men. And I get tired of people blaming women for having babies with dudes who end up being irresponsible. Because some men are good actors. Yeah, sometimes you can tell the dude ain't shit. But some men act like they're great people until the woman gets pregnant. And then they just switch up. Or they leave her. That can always fucking happen. Okay? And I'm going to get into that. Until the mid-1800s, abortions were legal and available in the United States. Both the church and the state permitted them as long as it happened before leaving. As long as it happened before the woman started feeling movement, it was legal. Now, keep listening to all of the facts I'm presenting because these facts are going to become important later when I start getting into some stories, okay? And why you always hear me denounce all this fucking patriarchal religious bullshit, okay? All of this. All right. So, until the mid-1800s, abortions were legal and available in the United States. Both the church and the state permitted them as long as it happened before the woman felt movement. In 1847, the newly formed American Medical Association. In 1847, the newly formed American Medical Association began a campaign to professionalize medicine and ban what they called quackery. What did they call quackery? Midwives and herbalists. There were midwives who were serving their community for generations. This is true of indigenous people. This is true of Africans, people of African descent, Europeans, all of that. Actually, I just got back from Colombia. I know I'm back in the States. I'm in Virginia, D.C. right now, then heading to New York. But this book right here, and I talked about this in one of my recent YouTube videos in Colombia about setting your nipples free in Cartagena. Make sure you listen to that video. This book, Parteria, Saber Ancestral y Práctica Viva. So this is the real life ancestral practice of midwifery. And this book comes from the Pacific coast of Colombia, where there's a whole bunch of African descendants, okay? And you see these photos? You see these photos? Colombia, Black people, okay? This is it. And this chapter is the therapeutic itineraries of women. Oh, what happened? Hold on. My IG live went out. Give me a second. Oh, I think my phone overheated. Okay, hold on. Oh, man. Okay. People on IG, I've been talking for 34 minutes, and the IG live just turned off. So the first 34 minutes of this conversation is not on this Instagram. So You can find it on my YouTube page because I am recording it on YouTube as well. So make sure you go to my YouTube page, The Renaissance Amazon, and listen to this full video from the beginning, okay? Because I just said a lot of important stuff. I'm about to get into the meat of it all. But I did say a lot of important things. So if you're joining me, make sure to go on YouTube and watch it from the beginning, because you just missed 35 minutes because the camera freaking stopped. I think my phone might have overheated. Yeah, my phone might be overheating. Okay, this phone is hot as fuck. All right, hopefully this won't turn off. You know what, let me, okay. Maybe I need to go downstairs. Okay. All right, so again, the camera turned off and on IG. So the first 35 minutes you missed, so it'll be on YouTube. So yeah, so you see, these are photos from this book, Black Hands, right? About the ancestral traditions of midwives. You have the herbs. You have the herbs. What did I say? The witches. They deal with herbs for women. Right here, aquí. This is, yeah, natural cures. Okay, look. You see the black midwives. This is in Colombia. Buenaventura, on the Pacific coast of Colombia. You see this. This woman right here, I'm going to talk about her in a second, right? But you see this photo. This is something that these girls learn from the time that they are children, okay? Another photo. You see? See the pot, see the herb, see the pregnant woman, see the grandmother midwife. Their ancient herbal knowledge, okay? More beautiful photos, okay? So I think you get the point, okay? So here's the book, Parteria, and I will put it below on Instagram, on YouTube. Okay, so this woman, she's on Instagram. I think her name is Manos de Patera, but I will put it below my YouTube video. I recently became hip to her. I actually found this book and didn't even realize it was associated with her. But I found that book in Colombia in the Museum of Gold. And then I noticed a girl, Indigimama, who I talk about all the time. She's a Mexican indigenous woman in Long Beach, California, who I've been studying with since like 2013, studying deep abdominal womb massage, studying women's herbal stuff. She's like a womb chiropractor. I don't know anybody like Indigimama or Pakazani. I will also put her information below. She is the truth. So, and Pakazani has 3 babies, 3 sons, and is pregnant with her 4th, and she delivered her past 2 herself, okay? This woman is the truth. So the woman, Patera de Manos, so Manos de Patera, and I can't pronounce her actual name, but I will put it below on my YouTube. She is associated with this book. She was the one that I pointed to in the photo that was delivering the baby. She started delivering babies with her mother when she was like 12 or something like that, right? She just taught a workshop in Long Beach, and I was so mad because I was supposed to be in Long Beach that weekend, but I ended up staying in Colombia longer because Pakazani was teaching another class that weekend, Asarar las Caderas, which has to do with how to close the woman after birth. How to close her hips and close her body, because after women have babies, there's a really important care that needs to take place. And that's what that training was about. But she moved it to next weekend. And so I canceled my trip to California and stayed in Colombia. Then come to find out, this beautiful, powerful, amazing Afro-Colombian midwife was in California with Pakazani. And she taught a workshop on healing sexual trauma with orgasm, okay? And she did an IG live where she was talking about traditional midwifery in Colombia on the Pacific coast, where the government had to recognize, now the Pacific coast of Colombia is 98% Black, African descendants, like African descendants. They have maintained a lot of their African traditions and practices on the Pacific coast of Colombia. And the Colombian government has had to acknowledge these Black midwives, okay? So it's very, very important work. Now, midwives, they didn't just deliver babies. They had the knowledge to help women who had fibroids, who had cysts, who had fertility issues. They had the knowledge to help women not get pregnant or to terminate a pregnancy if they needed to. They had the knowledge to deliver multiple births, to spin babies who weren't upside down. Okay, I have a twin. And because of how he was positioned, my head started coming out of my mother. They had to push me back inside of her and give her a C-section because they said it could have killed my brother or killed my mom. But old school granny midwives, they knew how to turn that shit, okay? They don't teach doctors that anymore. There's a lot of women with birth trauma, and birth trauma is just as bad as rape, okay? Can be just as bad as rape trauma. Now, okay, so in 1847, the newly formed American Medical Association began a campaign to professionalize medicine and ban what they call quackery, which included midwives and herbalists. Okay. Then, during the second half of the 19th century, Victorian society began judging and denouncing women who had abortions as being selfish, immoral, and running from the duties of motherhood. Then, the Protestant and Catholic churches joined with the American Medical Association in condemning women on some anti-abortion shit. Then anti-abortion legislation quickly began to get passed in the United States. By the turn of the century, birth control and abortion was illegal in the United States, in basically every state. Now, this is the other thing about this abortion. Now, this is a woman's reproductive rights. This is not just about abortions. I'm going to talk about a number of things, okay? Number of things. And we had to talk about sex because that's how we get pregnant. Sex, right? And we all like sex. So let's just be real about that. Okay. So I'm going to address this from all angles. The anti-choice people, I don't call them pro-life. I explain that because and as I continue to speak, you'll see why, but they're not fucking pro-life. They're anti-choice. They don't want women to have a choice. The same people who are so against abortion be against birth control too. Oh, so we can't even do anything to prevent getting pregnant? So you don't want us to have an abortion. So when we say, can we get some birth control? We can't get that neither. But then if we have these babies and we can't feed them, you're not going to fucking feed them. Are you going to take care of this baby while I go to work or give me money so I don't have to go to work? No, you're not. Or if a woman is about to die, because there are women who get pregnant and having that baby could kill them, okay? This is why Kim Kardashian had her last two babies via surrogate. She shared this on her show. Her first two pregnancies almost killed her. Serena almost died in labor. And some women have certain conditions where having a baby can kill them. And they get pregnant, and women do get pregnant even when they're using birth control. That happens too. So what is a woman to do if she has a condition where having a baby could kill her and she gets pregnant, but she's on birth control even and gets pregnant? So she's just supposed to accept the fact that, oh, I'm just going to have to die now. Like, what fucking sense does that make? Now we don't have mother or baby, or we have baby and no mother. What fucking sense does that make? Anybody who thinks it's okay is fucked up and evil, and fuck you. Seriously. Okay? Now, okay. So I'm going to get into some stories. Some of these stories are personal, and some of them are other people's stories. Okay? I'm also going to post some links below for you all to look at, okay? To just be quiet and look at the shit, because I'm so tired of the ignorance around this abortion discussion. So starting with my parents. I have an older sister who is 18 years older than me. When my dad was heavily involved in the civil rights movement. He got kicked out of college for being involved in the civil rights movement. He was a black radical. My sister's mother was not somebody he was married to. He said it was just a woman he was having sex with. She got pregnant. Because my dad was from the South, he's from Florida, and the time that he was, the time that it was, he said if a girl got pregnant, you married her, and that's what he was going to do. He was going to marry my sister's mother. But my dad, being a young radical and involved in the movement, my sister's mom was making fun of the civil rights movement. She was making fun of the Afros, right? My dad's mentor was a woman named Queen Mother Moore. And if you don't know who Queen Mother Moore is of the civil rights movement, she was like in her 50s already when my dad was like 19. She was a very important woman, okay? And there's actually a photo of her holding me when I came home from the hospital. She begged my dad not to marry my sister's mom. She offered to adopt my sister and said, you cannot marry her because my sister's mother was so fucking ignorant. And my dad was a real Black radical intellectual, right? But my dad was going to marry her anyway. My sister's mother ran away, and this is like 1960. So, back then you could really run away from somebody, you know what I'm saying? So my dad didn't see my sister until she was like, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5, and so she wasn't around that much. But by the time my dad got to see him, it was around my sister. She was so out of control and just like, crazy as fuck and out of control. And my sister had a very different life than me, okay? But all I know is that when I was a kid, and my dad had my brother and I, my parents growing up, they would argue a lot. And I used to wish they would get divorced. And my dad was so against getting divorced because he was like, nope, you're not taking my kids. And I don't think that my mom ever would have done that. My mom was not that kind of person. She was close to his family. I was close to my dad. My mom wouldn't have done that. But I think my dad was traumatized from having that happen to him in the past. And he was very adamant about the family staying together. My dad always talked about the disgrace of Black people having babies out of wedlock. Now, I don't necessarily share that sentiment, but my dad was very against that. He always talked about the statistics of out of wedlock Black kids growing up and how that was causing a problem. And he wasn't breaking up the household. He wasn't breaking up the family. He kept talking on the statistics on what happens when parents get divorced and families break up. So even though I heard him say that, I still was like, dude, but there's also damage that's done when you have to hear your parents argue all the time because kids don't want to hear that shit. So I wish they would go their separate ways, okay? Now, when, my dad said he found out my mom was pregnant, he was afraid because he always told my mom he didn't want any more kids. He said he always told her that, My mom got pregnant. And he said that he, at the time, was a musician. He didn't feel like he was stable enough, to have kids. And he thought about asking my mom to have an abortion. But when he spoke to his uncle told him he was tripping. His uncle told him about how poor they were when they had their first kid and how they had to keep the baby in a drawer or whatever. And and then when my dad found out my mom was pregnant with twins, he said he definitely couldn't do it, right? So me and my brother came. He's happy. He's been the best dad ever. Now, my mom told me when I was in my early 20s, she told me that she had 2 abortions prior to my brother and I and 1 after us, okay? And she had an abortion when abortions were illegal. And my mom, her mother died when she was 4 years old. Her father died when I was 4 years old. Her father was a coal miner in Western Pennsylvania, and he had been disabled because a coal mining machine fell on him. And so, there was 7 of them. My grandmother Valletta, that's who, Makeda Valletta. Valletta is my matriarchal grandmother who died when my mom was 4 years old. I never met her. She gave birth to 7 babies at home in the house, at a time in this country when babies were being born in hospitals to women who were highly medicated and strapped down and losing their fucking mind. They had to be strapped down because they were giving these women drugs that was making them lose their mind and pull their hair out. And it was horrible. But my mother's mom had 7 babies in the country in a hill in Western Pennsylvania, okay? So my mom was the youngest of 7. So when she was in her early 20s, she didn't have anybody. She didn't have the support of her mom or her father. All her siblings had their own families. So when my mom found out she was pregnant, She thought there's no way that she could have a baby with the man that she was pregnant by. She had an abortion, right? Now, after my brother and I, she had an abortion because this is the thing people don't understand. The highest percentage of abortions happens with women who are already married and already have kids, but they may not be able to afford to have any more kids. When my brother and I were kids, we spent a lot of time at my grandmother's house in Philly, and before we were in school, my parents would come see us in the weekend because they both had to work. Now you got twins, you got double the shit. So it takes a village. The whole family played a role in helping to upbring us. Now, what happens to the women that don't have family that can help them? You know what I'm saying? Now, I've always been super pro-choice, right? And I'm going to tell a personal story that a lot of times I kind of, only people who really know me know this story, but I feel like it only makes sense at this moment to share it because it's like, what's the point of going through shit and learning certain things if you can't share with other people? Because a lot of people right now are pointing the finger at these abortion laws that are being practiced. Being passed in the US, and they're saying, oh, it's white women's fault and it's white men's fault. And I say it's everybody's fault who didn't say anything, because I've never had an abortion, but I have been, like I said, very vocal in this shit since I was 9 years old. Where that came from at 9, I don't know. But I know tons of women have had abortions who have never been vocal about anything, never tried to speak up. I know tons of men who've asked women to have abortions, and they were with that woman when she had an abortion, and have not spoken up. So those are the people that I blame, all of y'all, right? So because I'm saying that, and because I'm sitting here thinking about certain things and listening to certain women's stories, it just enrages me. It makes me feel like I must share my story and my stories because I have also learned from it, okay? And how complex situations women can find themselves in. So when I was 29 years old, I was actually 28 at the moment, I did a photo shoot. Now, I never mess with, or like the photo shoots that I do, there's never been, the photographers don't come on to me, they're never inappropriate. That doesn't happen. But there was a photo shoot I did with a photographer in Brooklyn in 2010. Okay, this is 2010, right after I did my doula training, or around that time. And right after the earthquake happened in Haiti, actually, right? It was right around the time the earthquake happened in Haiti. And he was doing a book on Bed-Stuy. Now, I'm not from Bed-Stuy. I'm from Harlem. And he was the kind of photographer that didn't shoot nudes. He didn't shoot anything like that. He was more like a Gordon Parks kind of photographer. He shot like images of Black people, documenting them doing things, documenting them, taking care of their kids. He especially loved to document Black men being fathers and take photos of that, right? And so that was the kind of photographer he was. Now, he was doing a book on Bed-Stuy, and he told me, oh, I want to shoot you for this book, even though, again, I'm not from Bed-Stuy. And hold on a minute. Good. I'm so glad for the ignorant people who speak, so I can go block them as soon as I get off this IG live. Okay, so he said to me, I want to shoot you how nobody's ever shot you before. I want to shoot you with jeans and a t-shirt and heels. I'm like, okay. I don't really have any photos with jeans and t-shirts and heels. So it went from that to, oh no, let's do one nude shoot and one shoot with clothes. And a lot of people don't understand. Yes, I've done a lot of nude modeling, but it's been because of the photographers. People don't understand the photographers are also artists. So all the nude shoots I've done, that's because that's how the photographers saw me. I was their muse. They asked that because I'm okay. I've gone along with it. You know what I'm saying? But it's not like I'm like, oh, I love to be naked. It wasn't that. Okay. And I have videos where I talk about that. So he said, let's do one nude shoot and one with clothes. I'm like, okay, fine. Then it goes to, let's do the nude shoot on the first day. I'm like, okay, fine. Now we do this nude shoot right before I go to Haiti. The very first day I meet him, he's telling me, oh, you look like your hips are ready for babies. If you keep moving like that, you're going to end up pregnant. And he's saying this stuff to me. I wasn't saying this or thinking this, right? So I go to Haiti, and there was like this attraction between us. I go to Haiti. We're supposed to do the second part of the photo shoot. When I came back, I was supposed to have on clothes, or maybe we did the second part of the shoot before I went to Haiti. All I know is that I was nude both times. I was supposed to have my clothes, right, per him. So I go to Haiti, and I was there for like 10 days. This is like March of 2010, right after the earthquake. I came back. He picked me up from the airport. He insisted on picking me up from the airport. And at the time, I had just moved from Pittsburgh. I was living in Pittsburgh, planning on moving to New Orleans, and I was in New York for a couple of months in between that move from Pittsburgh to New Orleans. I was at my parents' house for a couple of months, right? This is when I met him. This is when this happens. He picks me up from the airport and insisted that I come to, his house, and he wanted to nurse me back to get health because I wasn't feeling good. So for like a week, he was taking care of me until I felt better. And I'm like, okay, cool. And now at this point, there's like this attraction between us. And then so I would go home, and it was just like, he just kind of was just like wanted me to stay. And like, we just grew into this relationship, and we were close, right? So I thought, oh, whatever. We were close. And I was saying I didn't want to have kids for 2 or 3 years. He was saying he didn't want to have kids for 5 years, right? Now, and he was 40 years old. So I was 28 when I met him. He was 39, okay? And then I ended up being 29. He ended up being 40. So he had no children. Now, during sex, now he was the one that when he met me kept saying, oh, you look like, your hips are ready for babies. You keep moving like that, you're going to end up pregnant. Then during sex, he's the one to talk to me about having his kids, having his babies. And I kept thinking to myself, we don't want kids right now. Why do you want to talk about that during sex, right? Like, I didn't think that made sense. He starts asking me if he could release inside of me. That was his question. I didn't ask him to do that. He asked that, right? Now, we tried to make it so that it happened when I wasn't fertile or, wasn't ovulating, so I wouldn't get pregnant. But still, if a man does that, there's always a chance. Like, fertility and how all this stuff works is way too complex. Okay? So this is the sum total of everything. Now, 7 months, into our relationship, I ended up pregnant. The second that he found this out, okay, from the very second that he found this out, he was upset and he wanted me to have an abortion. He was dead set on that. Now I'm 29. He's 40. He had just turned 40. And I thought to myself, like, I was always pro-choice. Like I've said in this video, I've always been pro-choice. And if I had gotten pregnant at 19, 17, 23, I would have had an abortion. Because honestly, I didn't want no damn kids at 23, 19, none of that shit. That I didn't even want kids at all at that age, right? Now at 29, I'm thinking all my friends have had abortions. All my friends had like 2 abortions by 29, okay? So I'm like, all right, and I loved him. I wanted to have kids with him, just not right that second, but it happened. And I couldn't wrap my mind around having an abortion, right? But he really started to throw temper tantrums, started acting. He told me it's not about you. That's what he told me. He didn't feel like his life was in the right place. He started to show up at my mom. Before I got pregnant, he was super caring and sweet to me, right? Super caring and sweet. Another thing, a lot of people know that I love women, and I make that clear. When I was 18 years old, I promised myself I would never deal with a dude who can't handle the fact that I love women, period, point blank. That shit is not up for discussion, and people think that's every woman's fantasy. I mean, every man's fantasy. It's not. There's a lot of men who can't handle that shit. They get jealous. They get in their fucking feelings. I don't give a fuck. I am not catering to any man's ego in that way. Like, yes, I'm attracted to women. So I always make that clear. He acted like he was okay with that in the beginning. So that's another thing. Note, right? Okay. So he started showing up at my mom's job. My mom had a serious job. She's a union organizer. He would show up at her job crying, having these temper tantrums. And so I kind of didn't want my dad to know completely everything that was going on because I didn't want him to get mad. But my dad knew that he was having a hard time. My dad tried to reach out to him to speak to him because my dad was 39 years old when my brother and I were born. My dad was 39 years old. And like I told you, he did not want any more kids. And if you're just joining this conversation, definitely go back and listen from the beginning. This is a long conversation, but it's something that is very important to me, an important period. And so, yeah. Okay. So my dad tried to reach out to him and he wouldn't speak to my dad. But he kept, showing my mom's job being super dramatic. I felt like I needed to move myself away from him. So I got away from him, tried to stay as calm as I could, and went to my parents' house. And my dad didn't completely know what was, how bad it was. I tried to stay calm. At the time, I was supposed to go to Costa Rica to teach for a month, my sensual strain training class, right? And I was teaching in multiple parts of the country. I had been there summer 2010, and now I was coming back in November 2010 to teach all around the country for a month. Now, at this point, I might have been like 10 weeks pregnant, right? Or something like that. And just like 3 days before I'm about to leave the country, he had he kicked me out of his house. He just turned really mean, like, because I wouldn't have an abortion, right? He's like throwing this temper tantrum. And so I was living with him. He kicked me out, whatever. I'm staying as calm as I could. And the 2 days before I was supposed to, I love all the people who keep writing the ignorant comments, because every single last one of them I'm going to block. And one thing I'm going to say, and I'm going to make very clear, if you haven't already understood about me, is that you can't make motherfucking demands. Like, I'm a cat, not a motherfucking dog. So the more people write to me and say, oh, why are you not dancing, blah, blah, blah. The more people that write that, the less it makes me dance. Like, there are times when I purposely will have a dance video that I don't post for a long time or at all because of people in their ignorant comments. So keep saying that shit so I can block you, okay? Now, because that shit I can't deal with. I'm not even a prudish person. Dudes, you could write, there's a lot of shit that I'm open-minded to that a lot of women aren't, but that shit is not gonna work. It's not. So just get blocked. So keep saying this stupid shit. So anyhow, what was I gonna say? Yeah, it was like 3 days before I was about to leave to go to Costa Rica to teach. And he calls me over and wanted to talk to me. So tell me he loves me, blah, 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 blah. And my cousin who's a priestess, Yoruba priestess, had told me, because I didn't want to leave the country on bad terms with him. I'm pregnant by him. There's all this drama. And actually, when he first started throwing his fit, wanted me to have an abortion, there were some days where he would act like he was okay with it. The next day, he was having a fit again, wanting to force me to have an abortion, right? And I kept thinking to myself, I've always been pro-choice, but I just did not feel like I could do that. Now, when a woman is growing a life inside of her, okay, to all the men out there, you cannot get pregnant. You don't know what that shit is like. To some women, if a woman does not want to have something growing inside of her, forcing her to do that can make her kill herself, okay? Can make her kill herself, can make her kill her baby, or be very harmful towards that baby. You have something growing inside of you. For a woman to have something growing inside of her, she has to be in a good headspace. She needs to have access to good food. What if that woman was fucking shooting up heroin all day yesterday, and then she found out she's pregnant today? Or she's a crackhead, a heroin addict, an alcoholic. And y'all think that because she found out she's pregnant today, she's going to just stop tomorrow? No, she's still going to be a fucking addict. Now you have heroin-born addicted babies and crack babies and those other shit that nobody wants to take care of. So what the fuck is you talking? So back to the story. A woman feels like she cannot continue and carry on with having this pregnancy. I don't feel like anybody has anything to say about it except her. But if a woman also is being forced to have an abortion and she feels like I cannot do that, I feel like that's also wrong. And there are women who get killed because a dude doesn't want to have a baby with this chick, and he might just kill her. Okay? So I go to my ex's house, because I didn't want to leave the country on bad terms with him. My cousin said, if he makes you tea, don't drink it. And if he has sex with you, if he tries to have sex with you, don't have sex with him. As soon as I came in his house, he had a pot of tea sitting right there. Then he started kissing on me and trying to go down on me. And I didn't even want to have sex with him or anything like that. But I also didn't want any problems. So I let it happen. He goes down on me. He puts a finger inside of me, okay? And he had never fingered me before. And that's actually something that I like. And he'd never done that before. He put a finger inside of me for like 3 seconds. And he pulled it out. And when he pulled it out, he had blood on his hands and he had blood on his face, okay? And he seemed unbothered by it. He just seemed unbothered by it. He went to the bathroom, washed his face, and I stand up and I'm bleeding, like significantly, like blood clots falling out, bleeding. And I called my best friend, who's a labor and delivery nurse, who's my childhood friend in California, and told her what happened, asking her, am I miscarrying? Like, what's, and she told me to monitor the bleeding. So he comes back in the room, totally unbothered about what just happened, calls the abortion clinic, proceeds to make an appointment for an abortion for me the next day. And I did not authorize that. They didn't hear my voice. I didn't know that a man could make an appointment for a woman to have an abortion. I didn't know that, right? So he made it for the next day, took me to eat, was trying to convince me to spend at his house that night. And I kept telling, and I said, no, I'm gonna go back to my parents' house, right? And I was telling him I didn't feel like I could do it. So I go home and the story gets worse. So I go home the next day. He's at the abortion clinic. He's calling me and my mom, threatening me to my mother because I didn't show up. And I then left the country the next day to go to Costa Rica to teach. And I'm trying to stay as calm as possible. Like, I wouldn't wish this on any woman. I never thought that this would happen to me because the person that I got pregnant by was a very loving, sweet dude before this. And he seemed like this stand-up Black man who helped kids and helped old people. And to this day, there are a lot of people who know who he is and they think he's a good person. He's fucked up. And if I saw his ass fucking choking to death, drowning, on fire, if I saw him on fire, I wouldn't spit on him, okay? So when people say you have to forgive people, no, the fuck you don't. Because there's certain things that's unforgivable. So going back into this subject, I'm staying calm. I didn't shed a tear, nothing. I'm like, I'm going to be calm. I go to Costa Rica. I had a dream. Now, at this point, I'm like 10 weeks pregnant, 11 weeks, and I was actually feeling movement, okay? So I was I just could not wrap my mind around getting an abortion. It wasn't something, also, both of my parents are Geminis. I have a twin brother. His mother was a twin. His mom had a twin brother, and they were both Geminis, and their birthday was the same day as my dad. And I was due during Gemini season, actually, right? And I actually feel like I might have been pregnant with twins and lost one when he fucking tried to poison me. So anyhow, I'm in Costa Rica, and I had this dream. Oh, I go to Costa Rica. He unfriended me on Facebook and didn't check to see if I was okay. None of that. So I had this dream that he was going to go to my parents' house and with his mom and talk shit about me, and I wasn't going to be able to defend myself. I had a dream about it. I woke up, and this is Thanksgiving, because I remember I was in Costa Rica on Thanksgiving. I woke up, and at the time I had a doula who was an Afro-Dominican woman from New York City. She's also a Ifa Yoruba priestess. And I wake up, she hit me on Facebook and told me that she had a dream and to stay away from him. She said, stay far away from him. And I said, yo, I just had a dream that he's doing his fucked up shit. So I was ignoring him. I wasn't speaking to him. People were telling me he was saying all these bad things about me. I wasn't talking about him, nothing. I was just staying calm. Oh, but one more thing. Prior to when it got that bad, when he first found out I was pregnant, all of a sudden he was embarrassed at me being attracted to women. He started telling me that was unacceptable. It was embarrassing to him. And I was like, dude, if I knew that you were embarrassed by me being attracted to women, I never would have fallen in love with you. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm against that shit. I'm not trying to be with a dude that can't accept the fact that I am bisexual. Yes, I do like women, period. Okay. So then he starts to tell me my photos are inappropriate, right? Now, I had those photos when I met him, and he photographed me nude. As I said in the story, when I first met him, he was supposed to shoot me with clothes on. And he wasn't even a nude photographer. He was a very good photographer, very, very good. Had lots of exhibits, stuff like that. But he didn't shoot nudes, and he shot me nude like 3 or 4 times, okay? So, and one of the classic photos that he shot, I have some classic photos that he shot of me that all of you have seen and loved, okay? Now, he tells me, but his photos are art. His photos are art, but the others aren't. So he starts to just all of a sudden insult me, tells me he doesn't know if he loves me, all this stuff, right? I'm just cool, calm, whatever. So now I'm in Costa Rica and I have this dream. I tell my mother, my mom's like, but he seemed like such a nice person. So my mom's like, yeah, he's supposed to come by tomorrow with his mother. And we're just gonna, me and your father are gonna meet with them and listen to whatever and talk to them. So I'm telling my mom, no. Like if I left the country and this dude is not even saying anything to me at all, and he just threatened me because I wouldn't get an abortion before I left the country, why would he have anything good to say? So my mother meets with him anyway. Next thing I know, my mother and my father call me after this meeting and they tell me, yo, because before my dad didn't want me to have an abortion. My dad was trying to support him and reach out to him and have a man conversation with him. But after my dad spoke to him, my mom called me and said, listen, my dad said, I know that you said that having an abortion would be traumatic for you. But my dad said, listen, I can tell you right now, having a baby with this man will be more traumatic than you having an abortion. And they're like, the things that he said about you. And his mother, now he's 40 years old, and he's with his mom. Now, his mother had him at 16 years old, right? She was a Panamanian, very Catholic family. She didn't want to have him. His mother wanted to have an abortion, didn't want to have him. But her family forced her to have him because they were religious. That's what I'm saying about these abortion laws, and how in New York, girls could get abortions as teenagers without their parents knowing, because sometimes when your parents know, they might stop you. And to make a girl have a baby who does not want to have a baby is going to bring a fucking fucked up person into this world, okay? So he didn't know who his father was until he was like 22 years old. His mom didn't want him, was forced to have him, never told him she loved him ever, and treated him like shit. He watched his mom get her ass beat by his stepdad all the time and was abused, okay? So now you see me do videos about narcissists. I realized that 3 of my exes were narcissists. I didn't even know what narcissists were. I'm a real ass person. I'm not crazy, and I don't fucking act. I don't play games. But I'm an understanding and empathetic person. So it's like I could be around my 3 exes all had serious fucking childhood trauma. Serious childhood trauma. And I realized that breeds crazy motherfuckers. And it's like, no offense to anybody. I'm sorry. I know a lot of people have childhood trauma. Everybody with childhood trauma is not crazy. But my experience dealing with dudes who have some sick ass childhood stories were fucking nuts. And I'm done with that shit. Okay. But anyhow, so yeah, so his mother didn't want him or whatever, is fucked up. And so he's 40 years old. Okay. My parents, my mom said, you know what? I was in Costa Rica. My dad said, your mother will get on a plane and fly to Costa Rica to be with you so you could have an abortion. Okay. But then and for a second, even though I didn't want to do it, I thought about it for a second, because the situation was getting so bad that I'm like, I can't imagine like what this baby looks like him. Like before, I could never understand how somebody could treat their kid fucked up when it looks like the other parent. I always thought that was crazy, but I started to be so disgusted at his actions that I thought, if this baby looks like him, what the fuck am I going to do? But then regardless, I thought I didn't want to have an abortion, but it was just getting so horrible. I never wanted to have a kid with somebody my parents can't stand, or that was treating me horribly. But then I realized abortion was illegal in Costa Rica. So even if my mom did want to come to Costa Rica to be with me to have an abortion, I was working. So I was working and I was making money, and I had to work because I needed that money, right? And I didn't have any time off in between teaching workshops. I was traveling from one part of the country to the other, and it was a day in between to get from point A to point B. And I couldn't miss money, right? But also, Costa Rica abortion was illegal. So that wasn't an option. So when I get back to the States, this is right before Christmas. Now I'm like 14 weeks pregnant or something like that, right? And now I'm in my 2nd trimester. And in New York, you can have an abortion in the 2nd trimester. But I had already felt all this movement. And I was like, now at this point, it's like real surgery. And like, I just could not do it. So as much of a fucking nightmare that the shit was, I just tried to stay as calm as possible, not be upset. I just kept, and I had been in Costa Rica around all these women, mothers, women who are pregnant, women who just had babies, teaching them stuff about these eggs and everything. And I just kept saying, and that was empowering. And I just kept saying to myself, like, this is my baby, that's what I kept saying in my mind. I had to stay calm. So when I was 6 months pregnant, I went into early labor. Okay. I was in Maryland I was in DC at my cousin's house. Okay, my very cousin, who's a priestess, whose mother is also a Yoruba priestess, Ifa priestess, and her mother is the one who took my mom to the hospital when my mom delivered my brother and I. We were born 7 weeks early, right? And her mom was and her mom is a priestess of Shango, who is the protector of twins. Okay, and I have a twin. My birth was very rough. I happened to be at her daughter's house, at my cousin's house in DC, when I went into early labor. Okay, and this is in 2011. And so I went to early labor and delivered a son who lived for 4 hours. And it's crazy because the morning that it happened, this dude, okay, my ex, who was being so fucked up, he sends me an email earlier that morning apologizing to me for being an asshole and said that he was ready to take responsibility and be a dad and do whatever. And he sent me an email earlier that day that I don't even think I responded to because I went into labor and couldn't do shit, right? So after this happens and we notify him, and I was terrified at the moment because I was thinking I was born 7 weeks early and I ended up being fine. My twin brother, he's 6'2", 220 pounds. We were born 7 weeks early, but not 3 months. And they at the hospital, they were like, well, this is not a miscarriage because the baby's still living. So we have to do everything we can to save this baby's life. But a lot of babies don't make it. And if they do, they can have all kinds of disabilities, which is scary as fuck to me to think about raising a baby with a bunch of disabilities by myself or even with a partner. That's a lot. When I was in college, I had to take a class about that when we had to deal with kids with mental and physical retardation. And I remember seeing some of these kids that brought tears in my eyes. Taking that class made me think I'm never going to complain because there's things about me that I don't like. There's things about me that I would really hide and I was terrified about. And there's still things about me I don't like. But it's not, when I saw people whose feet don't work, who can never speak to their parents and never look at them or shaking their whole entire life, I'm like, that shit was depressing. And I said, I'm never going to complain. Again, we all have things that we don't like, but shit, all my shit works at least, So when I started thinking about what that means, that scared me. But at the same time, it's like I wanted my baby to live, but I was like, also, I don't like, and this sounds fucked up to say, but this is real. It was scary to think about the baby living and having a whole bunch of problems, But the hospital I was at allowed me to hold my son and stuff. And I was just in complete shock, about what the fuck just happened. Now, when I reached out to him to tell him this, he immediately starts blaming me, asking me what I was doing wrong and blah, 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 just being a complete asshole, right? Went and signed the birth certificate. In order for me to have a ceremony and bury my son or cremate him or whatever, I needed the father's signature. He wouldn't sign it. So a really good friend of mine, a really good male friend of mine did it for me just so I could get my cremated son to have a ceremony, okay? Then this dude wants to start, tells me he wants to be at the ceremony. And I'm like, are you crazy? My father wanted to literally kill him. And I'm not even joking. And it's like, what kind of sicko are you? And then that was in 2011. So ever since then, I haven't spoken to him. But over the years, he has emailed me. He has liked something of mine on Instagram. I haven't looked at shit that he has done. He sent me, after I lost my son, he started sending me all these motivating emails. It's like, I don't need that shit now. You could have sent that to me when I was pregnant. You were being an asshole. Now you got what you wanted. And I remember thinking to myself, well, I couldn't, at least I know this wasn't meant to be. I could not go through with having an abortion. So this is what ended up happening. Now, there's a lot of things that somebody can say, like, a woman needs to be calm when she's pregnant. But there are women who are getting their ass beat when they're pregnant. There are women who are smoking crack and doing all kinds of drugs when they're pregnant. There are women who are living through shit like earthquakes in Haiti when they're pregnant. There's a lot of women who go through really stressful, fucked up things and they still have their babies. But at the same time, if you understand that pregnancy and childbirth is also very spiritual, and it's a very spiritual thing. And this is the thing I'm trying to get people to understand is like, there's so many things that can happen. Like in my situation, I had an ex who tried to force me to have an abortion, and I didn't want to do it. And there's women who get killed because of that. The dude straight up poisoned my ass. You know, his mother is a fucking mean Panamanian nurse. You know, I'm sure she told him, put these chemicals in your finger and put it inside of her. You know, like really, really, really no joke. And there are women who do get murdered for that reason. Now, you make abortion illegal and not accessible to women, and they're in a dangerous situation like that. There's women who get killed. There's women who will kill themselves, okay? So now the thing is that, and then if you have a country, because one thing, when I talked about the statistics before, about how countries that have totally illegal abortions have a really high amount, and how a lot of European countries who give women time off work, they have a very low abortion rate. That's because the women have support. If a woman doesn't have support, the only reason, as fucked up as this shit was that I was going through, the only reason why, you know, even though it was a nightmare and I never wished it on anybody, and I was just like, but because I knew I had a family that I still had support from, that I had a twin brother, you know, like all kids need a mother, a male and female role model. So it's like, if this dude wasn't going to be in my life and I had to do it by myself, then I'm like, well, I have a twin brother, you know, and I have my parents, and I have some type of people that love me and have support. But you got girls out here that don't have that. They don't have any siblings. They don't have any parents. Or they might have got raped by their dad. I mean, there's all kinds of situations that women find themselves in when they're pregnant. There are women who have serious health conditions, and trying to go through with that pregnancy can kill them. Can and will kill them. That happens. You have situations where a woman is with a man, and he seems like a good dude. And then all of a sudden he turns into a fucking nightmare when she gets pregnant, and that does happen. And then the dude leaves. So all these different situations, you know, and like there was a story, and I'm going to put this documentary below. I'm gonna finish up this conversation. I know I've been talking for an hour and 21 minutes. There was this dancer who, and I'll put the video below. Check out this documentary. It's the Untold Truth of Abortion, Untold Stories of Abortion, or something like that. There was this female professional dancer who had a daughter, was married, had an IUD because she did not want to get pregnant. And she got pregnant anyway. And the doctor told her that the baby could come out deformed because of the IUD. But if he tried to remove the IUD, it could cause her to have a miscarriage. She decided she wanted to try to remove the IUD. He said that when she came to do it, that he couldn't do it because abortion was a hot topic right now, and he didn't want to lose his medical license. So if he tried to remove her IUD and she had a miscarriage, he could be, you know, sent to jail. So he couldn't do it and risk that. So instead, so she said she'll do it herself. So he said, okay, I'll tell you what to do. And then when you're actually miscarrying, you can call me. So she tried to do it herself. He told her what to do. She tried to do it herself, and she fucking bled to death. Okay? Bled to death. Okay? There was a story about a woman who had an abortion when she was young. Because, like, back in the day, like I told you, my dad was born in 1942. People who were born back then and stuff, like, when girls got pregnant, they sent them away somewhere. Like, if you got pregnant as a teenager, 13, 14, they sent your ass away to some horrible place, okay? So this young girl had gotten pregnant, and also they weren't educating them. See, that's the thing. When I tell you in high school I was a peer educator, a lot of things can be prevented when you teach people education. Women had herbal knowledge on how not to get pregnant. Women had herbal knowledge on how to become more fertile or less fertile. You know, birth control, all that stuff, it comes from natural herbs and medicine. This is known knowledge, okay? And this is going back to what I'm saying about patriarchal religion and the problem, because the patriarchal religion is the one who started to punish the midwife and call them witches. Because according to the Bible, because I told you, I didn't grow up with that shit. I never read the Bible. I don't give a fuck about the Quran. Like, no offense, but I'm just being honest. Like, all that shit is a problem to me with the planet. But whatever it says, and there's a book called The Great Cosmic Mother, Rediscovering the Religion of the Earth. You need to read that book and you will completely understand what I'm saying. because it shows how like the Bible and all this stuff took stories that were way more ancient than the Bible and rewrote it and twisted it in order to suppress women's sexuality and our reproduction and the truth. Okay, so whatchamacallit? Damn, what was I saying? Damn, I was saying something about the witch hunts. So women who had the herbal knowledge got punished and called witches and tortured to death. Okay, so if girls knew how to track their cycles, they knew the herbs to use to not get pregnant, like all of those things, and we could prevent a lot of shit. So education is important. But back in the 40s, the 50s, the 30s, the 60s, a lot of girls didn't know anything. A lot of them didn't even know how they got pregnant. Because there was one story about a girl who the doctor told her she had a baby who was born really sickly. And the doctor told her that if she got pregnant again, she would die. And, oh, damn. If she got pregnant again, she would die. And she got pregnant 3 months later. And the doctor was like, I told you not to get pregnant. And she was like, yeah, but you didn't tell me how not to get pregnant. Like the girl literally didn't know how not to get pregnant. And she was terrified of dying because she already had a daughter to take care of. So she's like, well, if I die, hold up. She's like, if I die, then who's going to take care of the baby I already have? Right? Very valid. There's another woman who had an abortion, a legal one, damn near died. And she tells this story when she was a young teenager. And then she got raped by a man some years later and got pregnant and said she couldn't go through with having an abortion again. She couldn't. So instead, she gave birth to the baby and gave it up for adoption. People told her, don't look at the baby's face, right? Don't do it. Just give birth to the baby and don't look at the baby. She said no. She held the baby, whatever. But she owed money to pay for her room and board in the hospital. So she had to work it off in the nursery. So she had to work in the hospital nursery in order to pay off her bill for giving birth. And she said when she worked there, she had to see her baby in the damn nursery. And then she started to get this attachment. And then she saw the baby being taken away. And this woman is an old woman now. She's crying about the shit. Okay. That's the kind of shit that women have had to go through. Okay. Then, slave women in the United States. There's a video that a book that I posted on my Instagram page called The Birth of a Slave or something like that. The Birthing of a Slave. There are two books like that I wrote. That I have read, that I posted. But one of these books was talking about how a lot of enslaved Black women in the United States still valued family. And my dad always talked about that. Even during slavery, Black men and women were still getting married, So they still valued family. And a lot of women still wanted to have babies, And sometimes they did that because when they were pregnant, they didn't have to work that hard, like they could sit, like they didn't have to be, because in North America, and I'm not talking about the Caribbean or South America, but in North America, there wasn't a huge percentage of Africans that were brought here, and the slave trade ended early. So they didn't want us to die. They didn't want Black people to die because then they wouldn't have slaves. So they wanted us to reproduce, and they didn't want to work a pregnant woman too hard so that she would have a miscarriage because they wanted more slave babies. Okay. So if a woman got pregnant, then a lot of times she didn't have to be working that hard, whatever. But they also did value families. Okay. Now, traditionally, in all traditional cultures, people spaced their babies out by at least 3 years, right? They didn't have a baby back to back like this year, next year, because that drains a woman. That drains her nutritional stores, her ability to have, healthy babies consecutively. So in traditional cultures, they always would put at least 3 years. And it talks about how Black women who were enslaved in the American South, that's what they practiced. They wanted it to be 3 years, but the slave masters wanted it to be 2 years. So the slave masters would do everything they could to try to get these slave women to get pregnant, having breeders, watching their period. But one thing is that cotton can be used as birth control. And so the same women who were picking cotton were using it for birth control. Okay. Again, the wisdom of women and herbal knowledge. Okay. So these women would still, it was like a fight with the slave master who wanted them to have babies more frequently and enslaved Black women who wanted to control their own fertility and were able to control their own fertility. But also, lots of enslaved Black women were experimented on. They were experimented on by so-called doctors, okay, who were learning this craft when there was already midwives who knew how to do this. But you know what? There were witch hunts. And it happened here. It happened in South America. It happened in Europe. Okay, it happened on every motherfucking continent. This shit happened. So this is, again, where you see my disgust with patriarchal religion and how it affects so many aspects, and especially when it comes to women, a woman's sexuality, and a woman's reproductive rights. All of this shit comes from religious bullshit. And to the Black people out there who try to act like you're so Afrocentric, you care about the Black man and the Black woman, and you're about the truth, and you want some Hotep shit. If you want that shit and you're talking about some anti-abortion shit, you're talking just like the colonizers, just like the motherfucking missionaries, just like the people who enslaved us, because women always had ways to not get pregnant and to terminate pregnancies. And the very same people who be against abortion be also against birth control. So what does that mean? Girls just don't have sex, or they get raped or some shit? Like, you just have no control over, we have no control over our fertility. So we're not even human. You know what I'm saying? People give a fuck more, people care more about the rights of dogs than they are about women right now. More about some motherfucking dogs. Okay? So to me, it is completely unacceptable. And that's why in South America, a lot of the Latin countries, abortion is illegal. Why? Because they're super Catholic. Now, you know, I know midwives, and this is, you know, the book that I pointed out, Patriarchy, she talked about how they had to force the government to acknowledge them, okay? And there's an organization of like thousands of midwives in the Pacific coast of Colombia, where it's very Black. Remember, women used to have tons of kids. You know, my mom was one of 7, but a lot of people back in the day, they were one of 12, one of 10. Women knew how to birth babies, and they did so. And a lot of times they did so with ease without dying. But here comes, you know, the American Medical Association trying to also tell women how to give birth, because that's the other thing about women's reproductive rights. When I became a doula and started learning more about childbirth and what a woman's body goes through, it's like in labor, if a woman is left up to her own devices, a woman might do a lot of things. She might get up and start shaking her legs. She might go under a table and get on all fours and birth that baby. But the hospital forces a woman to lay on her back and push. You know, and sometimes pushing when she should not be pushing. Because honestly, and I have been through labor, okay, pure fucking labor that was not induced or anything. It's like throwing up, okay? When your body wants to throw up, you can't control that. Your body could be wanting to throw up and you want to try to hold it in, but you can't. You know, it takes over you like this. And all you can do is surrender and just surrender and open up and let it out. Same thing if you get diarrhea. If you really got diarrhea, you can try to hold that shit if you want. But those sphincter muscles will take over. Now, at one point, you just got to surrender to it. But it's more like throwing up, okay? So a woman doesn't need to be told when to push. Her body will begin to release. It comes over her. Well, all she has to do is surrender to it. But the medical community wants to tell a woman, oh, push now. Don't push now. Hold it back. What the fuck? That's not. So a lot of women have complications in birth because of that. There's a lot of women with C-sections and tears and things that's unnecessary because the hospital is forcing her to lay on her back and push instead of getting up and standing up, going and squatting in that corner, going and getting on all fours, you know, laying on her in her lover's arms, kissing them, nipple stimulation. I mean, there's a lot of things, you know. Being in labor is more akin to having sex if people did it naturally. You know, woman want to be in a dim room. There can be an erotic side to it. Or if a woman has a lot of trauma, that can come out. So there's a lot to be said, you know. And birth is something like, you know, when I was growing up, it was pro-choice stuff that I was very passionate about, and I'm still passionate about. But then when I started learning about what happens to women in birth, I became more passionate about that. And that was been like since 2010 that I've been learning that. But I've been teaching women with the yoni eggs and how to connect to their vaginal muscles, which not just helps with sex, but also helps in labor. It helps recovering from labor, all of that. I've been teaching that since 2007 and working with women since 2005. So there's a lot that I could say, and I guess I need to stop talking because I've been talking for almost 2 hours or an hour and 35 minutes, and I got books to write. There's a lot of things I have to share, a lot of things that I learned from book knowledge. Yes, I've been to school. Yes, I read a lot of books. I always have sources. And I will post some sources below in this YouTube video. But I also learned from working with people. And I learned from things that has happened to me, okay? So I don't always share how I know the things that I share. But I do know that I can understand. I will always point to, you know, things to look at. But I learn and research a lot of different ways. And when I talk about Pankazani and Digimama, who I speak about all the time, who I call her a womb chiropractor, the things that she does, I don't know anybody who does what she does. You know, I don't know anybody that does what she does. And it's like, there's no license for that. You know, in America, a lot of midwives are like under fire and like they can't deliver twins and they can't do this and they got all these restrictions. And then me being somebody who teaches about healthy sexuality. I teach women and I teach men. But for many years, I didn't talk about teaching men because of people taking things out of context, not understanding what I'm talking about because, oh, damn. Hold up. My IG ended. Time for me to stop talking. Okay, so yeah, people taking things out of context. You know, I just was like, because when you're a woman who is in tune with her sexuality and you are a sexual being and you're teaching about those things and then you're half naked and dancing in bikinis the way I do, you get attacked. You know, again, it's all a part of the witch hunts and the witch trials. And so like this, I know that I have to write a book. I know I have a lot to share because I could talk for a whole nother hour on this. But whether it's a midwife, an herbalist, or a woman who's teaching about sexuality, it's all a part of the witch hunts. It's all a part of the agenda of patriarchal religion to crush and punish a woman's control of her sexuality and her body. Okay, so I'm ended with that. And this is a long video. If you came late, go back and listen to it from the beginning when you can. And I will be putting some sources below over the next couple of days, books that you can read, and other videos that you can watch to give you some more perspective. Thank you for listening with an open mind, because I feel like the abortion question and women's reproductive rights is something that people speak about from a lightweight perspective a lot. Understand that there are many situations to be considered. Abortion is not just a woman who's just like, I want to fit my prom dress on Friday. I just want to get rid of this baby, get rid of this fetus. It's way more complex than that. Women can find themselves in all kinds of situations, life or death situations, in a variety of ways. So consider that. Listen to some women's stories. Listen to their stories. Put yourself in their shoes, okay? And understand that it's not your body. It's not your body. To force a woman to go through with being pregnant and giving birth when being pregnant is not necessarily fun. And especially not like if you're in certain situations. And then you feel like you're going to die when you're in labor. And to do that alone, to do that with no support, to do that when you're being threatened, you have no means to take care of this baby, and to be forced is crazy. But then the flip side, if a woman gets pregnant, to be forced to terminate the baby when this woman is like, I can feel this baby. I can feel this baby moving. I can feel this fetus, okay, moving inside of me. and I have a connection, and I've been dreaming, and you're like, nah, bitch, you need to get rid of that shit. That's also fucked up. So I understand it's hard being a man, but a lot of you motherfuckers ain't considering how hard it is being a woman, and the realness of actually growing life inside of you, and the fact that women are the ones that stand at the gateway of life and death. It's us, and this is the problem with patriarchal religion. It ignores that. This is the reason why God and goddess are not interchangeable. They're not the same motherfucking thing. And I will always point it out to people when they tell me that God knew what he was doing. He built my body. God didn't build my motherfucking body or who I am. This is all the goddess that you see and that you are hearing and who I serve. You'll never hear me say praise God or thank God or none of that. And I love my dad. I'm a dad's girl. Anybody who knows me knows I talk about my dad, but my mom is the one that birthed me. She's the one that breastfed me. Okay? My mom. And mothers should always be honored in that way. That's who we came from. I mean, some people do have some horrible moms. Yes, that's true. But, you know, and some people have moms that probably should have aborted them because it just brought demon children into this world. And that's also true. Because if you have a woman who's fucking miserable and hateful and pregnant and mad, like, I don't want this fucking thing growing inside of me. Fuck this shit. And then they have this baby and they're horrible to it. If your mother is horrible to you, that's like the worst shit ever. Especially to their sons. Boys who have horrible moms, they be forever screwed up. Forever. It's like nothing heals them. That's your mom. And if your mom doesn't love you and she left you, why for? I don't care if a woman had 10 abortions. I don't care what her reason is. If a woman doesn't want to fucking have a baby, then she shouldn't be forced to have a baby. A woman will risk her life not to have a baby. But a woman will also risk her life to have a baby. The women who might get pregnant and they're being threatened, you know, and their family disowns them, but they will do whatever they have to do to bring their baby into this world. A woman will risk their life on either side of that. So as men really need to understand that and consider that and fall back and know that you don't feel a heartbeat inside of you. You're not the one that has to go through labor, breastfeed, none of that. And life and situations are way more complex. Way more complex. But just try to imagine what it's like to have a living thing growing inside of you. Just try. And if you're not mentally even ready for that, that shit could make you jump off the motherfucking building, okay? And now there's no mother or baby. And what if that mother already has kids? There's a lot of things to consider, okay? So be sure to look at the books that I post below and the videos that I post below. And if you learned something from this video, please like it, please share it, please comment, please subscribe. And all of you with the ignorant comments, keep on giving them to me so I can block you. Okay, people, thanks for listening. It's Makeda Valletta, also known as the Renaissance Amazon. And have a good day. Bye.